There comes a time in life when the enemy will try to break you, when people will lie on you, when the ones you trusted will walk away, when it feels like every step you take, something is trying to pull you down. But let me tell you something. God will lift you up. See, the enemy wouldn't be fighting you if you weren't destined for greatness. The attacks are a sign that you are going somewhere. But what they don't know, what your enemies don't realize, is that they are not in control. God is. You see, David was just a shepherd boy when he was anointed king. His own father didn't believe in him. His own brothers doubted him. But when it was time, when God said it was time, David didn't have to fight for his throne. God lifted him up. What I'm trying to tell you is, stop worrying about your enemies. Stop stressing over who doesn't support you. Stop looking for validation from people who were never meant to be part of your destiny. God is your validation. There comes a time in life when the enemy will try to break you, when people will lie on you, when the ones you trusted will walk away, when it feels like every step you take, something is trying to pull you down. You try to do right, but wrong seems to find you. You try to move forward, but obstacles block your path. You try to stay strong, but the weight of life feels heavier with every step. But let me tell you something. God will lift you up. See, the enemy wouldn't be fighting you if you weren't destined for greatness. The attacks, the setbacks, the betrayals, these are not signs that you're losing. No, they're proof that you are on the right path. The closer you get to your breakthrough, the harder the enemy will try to stop you. But what they don't realize, what your enemies don't understand, is that they are not in control. God is. Think about it. If your enemies had their way, you wouldn't have made it this far. If the people who doubted you had their way, you would have given up a long time ago. If the enemy had his way, you would have been destroyed before you even had a chance to rise. But you're still here. You're still standing. And if God has kept you this far, He's not about to leave you now. You see, David was just a shepherd boy when he was anointed king. His own father didn't even invite him into the room when the prophet came looking for a king. His own brothers laughed at him, dismissed him, told him he wasn't good enough. But God didn't look at what people saw. He looked at what He placed inside of David. He looked at the purpose, the strength, the anointing, and when it was time, when God said it was time, David didn't have to fight for his throne. God lifted him up. I need you to understand something. When God is ready to elevate you, no man can stop it. No enemy can block it. No lie can erase it. No opposition can hold it back. What God has planned for your life is bigger than anything standing against you. But here's the thing. God doesn't just lift you up for no reason. He doesn't just put you on top because you want to be there. He prepares you. He refines you. He strengthens you through the struggle. Sometimes He allows the enemy to come against you, not to destroy you, but to develop you. You might be wondering, why am I going through this? Why do I have to fight these battles? Why do I have to deal with these haters? But what you don't see is that every battle is building you. Every hardship is shaping you. Every challenge is making you stronger for the place God is taking you. See, Joseph had a dream that he would be a ruler, but before he ever reached the palace, he was thrown into a pit. He was sold into slavery. He was falsely accused. He was thrown into prison. And yet every single thing the enemy tried to use to break him, God used to elevate him. The pit didn't stop him. The betrayal didn't stop him. The prison didn't stop him. And when the time was right, God lifted him up so high that the very people who betrayed him had to come back and bow before him. What I'm trying to tell you is, stop worrying about your enemies. Stop stressing over who doesn't support you. Stop looking for validation from people who were never meant to be part of your destiny. God is your validation. When He calls you, when He anoints you, when He chooses you, nobody can undo it. Nobody can take it away. They can talk about you, but they can't stop God's plan. They can try to block you, but they can't block what God has already opened. And I know it's hard when you feel like the whole world is against you. I know it's hard when you're doing your best, but people still doubt you, still attack you, still try to bring you down. But hear me, don't you dare let that stop you. Don't let their words break you. Don't let their negativity poison your spirit. You are not here to prove them wrong. You are here to fulfill what God put inside of you. Let them doubt, let them talk, let them laugh. Because when God moves, no enemy can block it. When God lifts you up, the same people who counted you out will have to watch as he blesses you. They will have no choice but to see what God is doing in your life. Your setbacks, they're setups. Your trials, they're training. Your enemies, they're elevators. Yes, sometimes God will let people count you out just so he can bring you back in. Sometimes he will let them laugh at you just so he can lift you up right in front of them. Sometimes he will let you go through the valley just so that when he takes you to the mountaintop, there will be no doubt that it was him who did it. And when he does, when he does, they will have no choice but to watch. They'll have no choice but to wonder, how did they make it? They'll have no choice but to say, I thought they were finished, but look at them now. So, I'm here to tell you, don't quit. Don't let the enemy shake you. Keep your faith strong. Keep your head high. Because when God gets ready to lift you, it won't be by accident. It won't be small. It won't be something you have to force. It will be undeniable. It will be unstoppable. It will be divine. And when that time comes, stand tall. Because God will lift you above your enemies. And when he does, no man, no enemy, no obstacle can ever bring you down again. Your setbacks are not the end of your story. Your failures, your struggles, the moments when everything seems to be falling apart, these are not signs that you are losing. No, they are the very moments that are setting you up for something greater. You see, every time life knocks you down, every time you stumble, every time you feel like you can't take another step, that is not the time to quit. That is the time to stand firm, to hold on. Because what you don't see is that God is working behind the scenes. It's easy to look at a setback and think, this is it. This is where I stop. This is where my dreams die. But you are only seeing a small part of the picture. What you see as a delay, God sees as development. What you see as a failure, God sees as preparation. You think you've been pushed back, but God is actually pulling you back like an arrow, getting you ready to launch forward in a way you never imagined. Think about the story of Joseph. He had a dream that one day he would be a ruler. He saw his future, knew that God had something great in store for him, but before he ever reached the palace, he found himself in a pit. His own brothers threw him into darkness. The people closest to him turned their backs on him. He was sold into slavery. He was falsely accused. He was thrown into prison. It looked like everything was falling apart. But what Joseph didn't realize in those moments of struggle was that every single hardship was moving him closer to his destiny. Without the pit, he wouldn't have gone to Egypt. Without slavery, he wouldn't have ended up in Potiphar's house. Without the false accusation, he wouldn't have gone to prison. Without prison, he wouldn't have met the cupbearer. And without the cupbearer, he wouldn't have stood before Pharaoh and been lifted up to rule. What I'm trying to tell you is that every setback in your life is part of a divine setup. Every challenge, every obstacle, every heartbreak, it's not there to break you, it's there to prepare you. If Joseph had been lifted up too soon, he wouldn't have been ready. If he had stepped into his destiny before the right time, he wouldn't have been strong enough to handle it. And the same is true for you. The reason you haven't seen the breakthrough yet is not because God forgot about you. It's not because you're not worthy. It's because he is still preparing you. You are not being denied. You are being refined. You are being molded. You are being shaped. Because when God finally lifts you up, it won't be small. It won't be temporary. It won't be something that can be taken away. It will be permanent. I know what it feels like to struggle. I know what it feels like to watch other people rise while you feel stuck. I know what it's like to wonder, God, when is it going to be my turn? But you have to understand, just because your moment hasn't come yet doesn't mean it's not coming. Just because you don't see the breakthrough doesn't mean it's not on the way. You don't have to chase what God has already set aside for you. You don't have to force doors to open. You don't have to beg people to support you. When the time is right, God will open the doors no man can shut. When the time is right, the opportunities will come looking for you. And when that moment comes, you will realize that everything you went through, the tears, the losses, the long nights, the battles, they were not wasted. They were necessary. Because without the struggle, you wouldn't have the strength to handle the blessing. Without the pain, you wouldn't have the wisdom to walk in your purpose. Without the trials, you wouldn't have the faith to stand firm when the pressure comes. So, hear me when I tell you, don't quit in the middle of the process. Don't walk away from your destiny because the road is rough. Don't throw in the towel just because you don't see the results yet. Some of the greatest victories come after the hardest battles. Some of the biggest blessings come after the deepest struggles. Look at David. Before he became king, he spent years running for his life. Before he sat on the throne, he had to hide in caves. He had to fight battles. He had to face rejection. God didn't just hand him the kingdom. He had to grow into it. He had to be tested, to be strengthened, to be prepared. Because if you are not ready, the blessing can destroy you. If you step into your destiny too soon, it can break you. That's why you're in this season. That's why it's been hard. That's why you faced opposition. Because God is making sure that when He lifts you up, you are strong enough to stay there. So don't be discouraged by the struggle. Don't be intimidated by the challenges. What looks like a setback is actually a setup. What feels like a delay is actually preparation. What seems like rejection is actually redirection. Because when God moves, He moves in ways you never expected. You may feel like you've been pushed down, but that just means you're about to be lifted up. You may feel like doors have been closed, but that just means God is about to open the right one. You may feel like you're being overlooked, but that just means God is saving the best for last. And when that moment comes, when God lifts you up, when He takes you to the place you were meant to be, there will be no question that it was Him. There will be no doubt that His hand was on your life. And every single person who ever doubted you, every enemy who ever tried to stop you, every obstacle that ever stood in your way, they will have no choice but to watch as you rise. So don't give up now. Don't let this moment make you doubt your future. What God started, He will finish. What He promised, He will bring to pass. And when He lifts you up, no man, no enemy, no setback will ever be able to bring you down again. Your enemies are nothing but distractions. They are noise in the background, trying to pull your attention away from your purpose. The more you focus on them, the more power you give them. But if you turn your focus to God, if you lock in on your mission, nothing they do will be able to stop you. Because here's the truth. When God has called you, when He has assigned you to something greater, the opposition will come. The doubters will rise. The haters will talk. The attacks will come from every direction. But none of that matters when you understand that God fights your battles. Too many people waste their energy trying to prove something to their enemies. They spend time responding to negativity, trying to defend themselves, trying to convince people of their worth. But what if I told you that you don't need to fight that battle? What if I told you that your enemies are not your problem? Your enemies are God's problem. He sees everything. He hears every word spoken against you. He knows the obstacles that have been put in your path. And trust me, He is not ignoring it. Look at the story of Daniel. He was a man of integrity, a man who served God faithfully, and yet his enemies wanted to bring him down. They couldn't find any fault in him, so they created a trap. They manipulated the system to throw him into a den of lions. They wanted to silence him. They wanted to destroy him. But what they didn't realize was that God was with him in the lion's den. The very thing that was meant to kill him became the very thing that revealed God's power. The lions couldn't touch him. The enemy's plan backfired. And in the end, the same people who tried to destroy him were the ones who fell. That is what happens when you let God fight for you. That is what happens when you stay focused on your purpose instead of your enemies. The trap they set for you, it will become the thing that lifts you higher. The pit they tried to bury you in, it will become the foundation for your success. The lies they told about you, they will be exposed, and you will rise even stronger. But here's what you have to understand. You can't fight and focus at the same time. You can't move forward if you are always looking back. If you spend all your time worrying about what people are saying, worrying about who doesn't like you, worrying about who is against you, you will miss what God is trying to do in your life. The enemy wants to distract you because he knows that if you ever lock in, if you ever fully trust God, if you ever stop entertaining the negativity, nothing will be able to stop you. Think about Nehemiah. He had a mission to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, and his enemies hated it. They mocked him. They tried to intimidate him. They sent messages trying to lure him into a fight. They wanted him to stop what he was doing and come down to their level. He wanted him to stop what he was doing and come down to their level. But Nehemiah didn't fall for it. He didn't stop building to argue. He didn't pause his purpose to fight small battles. He simply said, I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. And that's the attitude you need to have. You are doing a great work. You are building something with your life. You are moving towards something greater. You cannot come down. You cannot stop to entertain negativity. You cannot waste time trying to win over people who were never meant to support you in the first place. Because the truth is, some people don't want to see you win. Some people will pretend to support you, but they are secretly hoping you fail. Some people smile in your face, but secretly plot against you. And that's okay. That's life. But what you have to remember is that their opinion does not define your destiny. Their words do not hold weight over what God has spoken over your life. When Jesus was on the cross, his enemies mocked him. They challenged him. They said, if you are really the Son of God, come down from that cross. They wanted him to prove himself. They wanted him to fight back. But Jesus knew that his power was not in coming down. His power was in staying up. His victory was in enduring, in finishing his mission, in staying the course no matter what they said. And because he stayed up, he secured the greatest victory of all time. And that's what you need to do. Stay up, stay focused, keep building, keep moving forward. Let them talk, let them doubt, let them plot. None of it matters, because when God lifts you up, they won't be able to stop it. And when that moment comes, when you rise above the very people who tried to keep you down, when God prepares a table for you in the presence of your enemies, when the same people who doubted you have no choice but to watch you succeed, you will understand that every attack, every lie, every obstacle was just a stepping stone. You will understand that God was always in control, that he was always making a way, that he was always making a way, that your enemies were never a threat to your destiny. They were just part of the process. So don't be discouraged. Don't be distracted. Keep your eyes on God. Keep your feet moving forward. Keep your faith strong. Because when the time comes, when God decides to lift you up, nothing, no enemy, no attack, no obstacle will be able to hold you down. There comes a time in life when you must decide who holds the power over your future, your enemies or your God. Too many people let their enemies dictate their emotions, their reactions, their mindset. They spend their energy proving people wrong, fighting battles that don't matter, and trying to win approval from people who were never meant to support them in the first place. But I'm here to tell you today, you don't have to fight for what God has already given you. You don't have to chase validation. You don't have to beg for a seat at a table that God never designed for you to sit at. When He lifts you up, it won't be because of your enemies. It will be in spite of them. Look at David. He was anointed king as a young boy, but for years he was on the run from Saul. The man he once served turned against him. He was hunted, threatened, and forced to hide in caves. It would have been easy for David to get bitter, to take matters into his own hands, to strike back. In fact, there was a moment when he had the perfect opportunity to kill Saul. His men even encouraged him, saying, "This is your moment. God has given your enemy into your hands." But David refused. He understood something powerful. His promotion did not depend on eliminating his enemies. It depended on waiting for God's timing. He knew that the same God who anointed him would also appoint him. The same God who called him would also establish him. He didn't need to fight for his own victory because his victory was already secured. And that's the mindset you need to have. Some of you are wasting your energy fighting battles that don't belong to you. You're trying to clap back at people who are talking behind your back. You're trying to prove your worth to people who will never see it. You're spending sleepless nights worrying about how to respond to the attacks coming against you. But let me remind you, the battle belongs to God. That means you don't have to retaliate. You don't have to get even. You don't have to defend yourself against every lie, every accusation, every attempt to tear you down. When God is your defender, He will silence your enemies without you even having to say a word. He will clear your name. He will make the truth come to light. He will handle every force that tries to rise up against you. That's why the Bible says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." It doesn't say the weapons won't form. It doesn't say you won't face opposition. It says the weapons will not prosper. The attacks may come, but they won't succeed. The enemy may try to stop you, but he won't win. The people who plot against you may think they have the upper hand, but they don't realize they are fighting a battle they already lost. Because when God is for you, who can be against you? You don't need everyone to like you. You don't need everyone to support you. You don't need everyone to understand your journey. The only thing you need is for God's hand to be on your life. And when He lifts you up, there will be no debate. There will be no question about whether or not you belong. He will put you in positions that your enemies never thought you would reach. He will give you opportunities that people said you weren't qualified for. He will bless you in ways that will leave your doubters speechless. And here's the best part. God doesn't just lift you up in private. He does it in front of those who tried to keep you down. Think about the story of Moses and the Israelites. Pharaoh tried to keep them in bondage. He tried to control their future. He made them suffer. But when God said it was time for them to be free, there was nothing Pharaoh could do to stop it. The Israelites walked out of Egypt with their heads held high, and when Pharaoh tried to chase them down, God drowned their enemies in the Red Sea. That's what happens when God is on your side. The very people who tried to hold you back will have no choice but to watch you move forward. The very ones who tried to break you will see you walk in victory. The same ones who tried to keep you in chains will see you rise above everything they did to hold you down. So stop worrying about your enemies. Stop stressing over people who don't believe in you. Stop losing sleep over battles that God already won on your behalf. If they don't support you, that's fine. If they don't see your worth, that's their loss. If they try to block your progress, they are only setting themselves up to be disappointed. Because when God has His hand on your life, no person, no lie, no attack can change His plans for you. What you need to do is keep your eyes forward. Keep walking. Keep working. Keep trusting. Let your enemies do what they do, but don't let them distract you. Their opinions don't define you. Their actions don't control your destiny. Their words don't determine your future. And when the time comes, when God lifts you up, when He puts you in the place He has been preparing for you, it will all make sense. You will look back and realize that every attack, every setback, every betrayal was just a setup for your breakthrough. You will realize that you never needed to fight your enemies. You just needed to trust God to handle them for you. There will always be people who doubt you, people who try to stop you, people who plot against you. That is just part of life. You can do everything right, walk with integrity, be kind, be faithful, and still there will be those who want to see you fail. But here's what you need to understand. Their opposition cannot override God's plan. What they say about you, what they try to do to you, how they attempt to block you, it won't work because God is the one who has the final say. You see, when God chooses to lift you up, it doesn't matter who is against you. It doesn't matter who is against you. It doesn't matter how powerful your enemies think they are. It doesn't matter how many people try to stand in your way. When God's favor is on your life, He will open doors that no man can shut. He will make a way where there is no way. He will elevate you to a position that your enemies never thought you would reach. Think about Esther. She was an orphan, an outsider, someone who had no real power or influence, but God had a plan. He placed her in a position of favor, made her queen, and used her to save an entire nation. And in that process, there was a man named Haman, an enemy who plotted against her people, an enemy who used his influence to try to destroy them. He thought he had control. He thought he was going to win. He even built gallows to hang Esther's cousin, Mordecai. But what Haman didn't realize was that God was working behind the scenes, because in the end, the very trap that Haman set for Mordecai became the trap that took his own life. The plan he put in motion to destroy others became the very thing that destroyed him. That's what happens when you try to fight against someone who is covered by God. You don't win. The enemy's plans backfire, and the person they tried to take down, they rise even higher. That's why you don't have to worry about your enemies. That's why you don't have to lose sleep over who is plotting against you. Let them talk. Let them scheme. Let them do whatever they think they need to do. Because when it's all said and done, they will not win. They will not succeed. The Bible says, when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. That means no matter how strong the opposition seems, no matter how much pressure you're under, God has already positioned Himself as your defense. You are not standing alone. You are not fighting this battle by yourself. God is lifting you up, shielding you, covering you, and leading you to victory. But here's the key. You can't let the attacks of your enemies make you bitter. You can't let the opposition cause you to step out of character. That's what the enemy wants. He wants you distracted. He wants you so focused on who is against you that you forget who is for you. He wants you to fight in your own strength so that you tire yourself out instead of letting God handle it. That's why you have to rise above it. You have to stay focused. Keep your eyes on God. Keep your heart clean. Keep moving forward. Don't let the negativity, the doubt, the betrayal pull you off course. Because when the time comes, when God steps in, when He lifts you above your enemies, when He turns the situation around, it will be undeniable. People will have no choice but to see that it was God who did it. The same people who doubted you, the same ones who tried to stop you, they will have to sit and watch as God blesses you, as He elevates you, as He places you in a position they thought you would never reach. That's what happened to Joseph. His own brothers threw him in a pit. They sold him into slavery. They thought they had ended his future. But what they didn't realize was that God was using their betrayal to push Joseph into his destiny. Every setback, every hardship, every injustice, it was all part of the plan. And when the moment finally came, when Joseph was lifted up, he wasn't just blessed, he was placed in a position of power. He was second in command over all of Egypt. And the same brothers who betrayed him, the same ones who threw him in the pit, they had to come before him and ask for help. They had to stand in front of the very man they tried to destroy and witness how God had lifted him up. That's how God works. He doesn't just lift you up. He lifts you up in front of those who tried to hold you down. He prepares a table for you in the presence of your enemies. He makes sure that when your victory comes, there is no question that it was his doing. So don't waste your time worrying about the opposition. Don't stress over who is against you. Don't let fear, doubt, or frustration take root in your heart. Keep walking in faith. Keep standing strong. Keep trusting that God is working. Because the same God who did it for Esther, the same God who did it for Joseph, the same God who lifted David from the wilderness to the throne, he is the same God who is lifting you up. And when he does it, no enemy, no attack, no obstacle will be able to bring you back down.